Alright guys, today we're going to go over study guide 2, systems of equations. It was a pink paper, or for most of us it was pink, I think. The first 10 are all going to be substitution. So remember, whenever you have substitution, you're going to pick a variable to get by itself. So you're going to pick a variable to get by itself. Step 2, then you're going to sub that expression, that means the other side, into the other equation. You're going to simplify. Remember, simplify usually means the distributive property. It also means like terms. Then we're going to solve the resulting equation after we simplify. It should be pretty easy once you simplify. You're going to get a number answer. You're going to take that number answer. You're going to plug it into the original equation. Usually if you start with the one you started with, it's a little bit easier, so I always recommend that. So sub a number answer into original equation, you're going to solve, you're going to get a second number answer. Then you're going to write your answer as an ordered pair. Remember, you're writing as an ordered pair because that tells us both x and y happen at the same time. Alright, that's what we're going to do. Alright, so number 1, we have y equals 4x minus 9. We have x equals y plus 3. You can either pick the top y or the top bottom, the top y or the bottom x, it doesn't matter, so I'm just going to pick the top y. I like to box up the other side because that tells me all of this stuff in the box is going to go in for y in the second equation. So that's step 1 is already done for us. Step 2 says I'm going to write the bottom equation. And instead of y, I'm going to put 4x minus 9 plus 3. Now this one's pretty easy. The parentheses there is no distributive property here. So the parentheses just go away. And you're going to combine like terms. So now we're on the simplify part. So I'm going to do negative 9 plus 3. I'm going to get x equals 4x minus 6. Now remember, we want to put the x's on the same side, so I have to subtract 4x from both sides. I end up with negative 3x equals negative 6. Now, I'm going to solve, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. Remember guys, I'm going to be kind of lazy, and later in the video, I'm not going to write step 1, step 2, step 3 out. Whenever I change colors, that means that it's a new step. So I divide both sides by negative 3. I get x equals positive 2. I get a number answer. I take that number answer, I'm going to plug it into the original. I can plug it into either one, but I think it's a little bit easier if I plug it into that x right there. So I'm going to say y equals 4 instead of x. I'm going to put 2 minus 9. Y equals 8 minus 9. So y equals negative 1. I get an answer for x, I get an answer for y, so I'm going to write it as an ordered pair, 2, negative y. That's the solution. That's my answer right there, as an ordered pair. And that's it for number 1. Alright, number 2, exact same concept, it's actually a little bit easier because there's only one choice. I have to pick the bottom x, which means 3 plus y is going to go into the top x. So I'm going to rewrite the top one. So I'm going to write 4, but instead of x, I'm going to put 3 plus y. Plus 2y equals 10. I have to distribute, so I'm going to have 12 plus 4y plus 2y equals 10. I end up with 6y plus 12 equals 10. So remember, this was my distributive property. This step, use like terms. Now I'm going to solve, so I'm going to get rid of the 12 first. Remember, if you're not sure what we're doing here, guys, we're using PEMDAS in reverse. Or I have to get rid of the subtraction. There isn't any. Then the addition, that's why I subtract 12 from both sides. I end up with 6y equals negative 2. The addition's gone. There is no division. There's multiplication, which is why I divide both sides by 6. And look, y is by itself. Negative 2, 6 becomes negative 1/3. If you have y equals negative 0.33, that's okay too, even though I do like negative 1/3 the best. Now I'm going to take negative 1/3, I'm going to plug it in to the original. I'm going to plug it in right there. So I'm going to write x equals 3 plus negative 1/3. I get x equals 2 2/3. Look, I have a number answer. Even though it's a fraction, that's okay, guys. Remember, if every number was going to be a nice, easy answer, I would never had to have learned a different method. So we have to have these other methods because sometimes fractions do show up. So my answer is negative 2 2/3, negative 1/3. I also will see negative 2.67 and negative 0.33. Those are both acceptable. If you have negative 2.6, you're kind of off a little bit. I probably wouldn't take off for it, but you did round it correctly. All right, number 3. Look, y is already by itself, so I'm going to put negative 5 in for y. So, guys, actually, step 1, step 2, and step 3, they're all done because I already have a number answer for y. All right, so when I plug this in, I'm actually just doing the last step where I say 5x plus 4 instead of y. I'm going to put negative 5 equals negative 20. I get 5x minus 20 equals negative 20. I add 20 to both sides. I get 5x equals 0, so x equals 0. I have an x, I have a y. You could plug the 0 into the top x or the bottom x and still get an answer, but I already know the answer for y, so I'm just going to write my thing as an order pair. 0 first, negative 5. That's my answer for number 3. All right, number 4, exact same concept, guys. Look, x is by itself, so I'm going to box up negative 7y. Negative 7y is going to go in right there. So 2 instead of x, I'm going to put negative 7y. Minus 8y equals 22. I get negative 14y minus 20, minus 8y equals 22. I end up with negative 22y equals 22. Now I'm going to solve. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 22. So I divide both sides by negative 22. I get y equals negative 1. I get a number answer for y. I'm going to go back to my original problem. I'm going to say x equals negative 7. Instead of y, I'm going to put negative 1. Get x equals positive 7. I have an answer for x. I have an answer for y. I'm going to write my answer as an order pair, 7, negative 1. And that's it for 4. All right, number 5, exact same concept. Look, y is by itself. I take 6 plus 2x. I'm going to plug it in for y. So now I'm going to just rewrite the bottom equation as 4x minus 2, but instead of y, I'm going to put 6 plus 2x equals 5. I'm going to distribute. Don't forget that's a negative 2, so it's going to be 4x minus 12 minus 4x equals 5. Something interesting happens here. The letters cancel. So if the letters cancel, it's either going to be infinite solutions or no solutions. And here's how you know. That's false. 12 does not equal 5. So since false, no solution. All right. If that would have said like negative 12 equals 12 or 5 equals 5 or 0 equals 0, then you would have said infinite solutions. So that's it for 5. All right. So number 6, it doesn't matter whether you pick the top or the bottom x or the bottom y. I'm going to pick the bottom x, which means y is going to go in for x. So this is going to become negative 7y plus 2y equals 18. I combine like terms, I get negative 5y equals 18. I divide both sides by 5, or negative 5. I get y equals negative 3 2/3. If you want to put negative 3.67, that's okay too. It doesn't really matter. If you did do negative 3.6, that's kind of off because you did not round correctly. Because it's 6666 going on forever. It should round up to 67. Now look, I'm going to put negative 3 2/3 in for y right there. So x equals negative 3 2/3. And this really messes a lot of people. They didn't think this was possible, but it is possible for x and y to be the same thing. And that's actually what this line's saying right there. So it's okay. We end up with negative 3 2/3. negative 3 2/3. That's our answer right there. That's it for number 6. Alright, number 7, exact same concept. Look, x is by itself. That means 2y minus 21 goes in the box, which means 2y minus 21 is going to take x's spot in the top line. So now I'm going to rewrite the top equation, 7, but instead of x, I'm going to put 2y minus 21 plus 2y equals negative 19. I'm going to use my distributive property, so I'm going to get 14y minus 147 plus 2y equals negative 19. 14y and 2y is 16y minus 147 equals negative 19. Now, I'm going to combine like terms. I'm going to solve. So I'm going to add 147 to both sides. I end up with 16y equals 128. So remember, now you have to get rid of the 16 in front of the y, so you do that by division. I end up with y equals 8. I have a number answer for y, so I'm going to plug it into the bottom equation. I'm going to put 2 instead of y, I'm going to put 8. Minus 21 equals x. I get 16 minus 21 equals x. So x equals negative 5. I have an answer for x. I have an answer for y. I'm going to write my answer as an ordered pair. Negative 5, 8, and I'm done with 7. And that's it. Alright, number 8 is another easy one because, look, x is equal to negative 7. So not only is step 1 done, step 2 is done, and step 3 is done. Because I have a number answer. So now I'm just going to put negative 7 into the top. So I have negative 5 instead of x. I'm going to put negative 7 plus 3y equals 17. I get positive 35 plus 3y equals 17. I subtract 35 from both sides. Just get rid of the order of operations, guys. You got to get rid of the 35 before the 3 because that's actually multiplication. It's 3 times y. So I end up with 3y equals negative 18. I divide both sides by 3. The y equals negative 6. I have an x, I have a y. My ordered pair is negative 7, negative 6. And that's it for 8. Alright, so numbers 9 and 10 I'm going to do real quick. And I'm only using substitution just because of the directions. Okay, because they told me to use substitution, I'm using substitution. Normally I would use elimination. So numbers 9 and 10 are actually a little bit harder because we're using substitution when we really shouldn't. So number 9, look, even though everything's lined up, I'm still going to use substitution. So step 1 says I'm going to pick the bottom x. I'm going to get that bottom x all by itself. So to do that, I'm going to add 2y to both sides. So that means I end up with x equals 2y. So there's my box x, or there's my circle x, and my box is 2y, which means in the top equation, I'm going to rewrite the top equation. For wherever I see an x, I'm going to put 2y. So I'm going to put negative 7, but instead of x, I'm going to put 2y plus 4y equals 24. I end up with minus 14y plus 4y equals 24. I have to combine my like terms. I end up with minus 10y equals 24. So now I'm going to solve, so I divide both sides by negative 10. I end up with y equals, you can have negative 12 fifths, that's an option. You could have negative 2.4, that's an option. You could have negative 2 and 2 fifths, also an option. Any one of those three are going to work. I'm going to plug negative 2 and 2 fifths into the top equation right there, or the bottom equation. So I'm going to have x minus, instead of, we're going to have 2 and then 2 and 2 fifths equals 0. I'm going to get x minus 2 and 2 fifths is negative 24 fifths, which is going to be negative 4 and 4 fifths. So I'm going to add 4 and 4 fifths to both sides. I get x equals 4 and 4 fifths. So that means my order pair, my answer, is going to be 4 and 4 fifths, or maybe you have 4.8, and then negative 2 and 2 fifths. And that's it for number 9. Alright, once again, number 10, I would use elimination if I was allowed to, but remember, the directions said that they want us to use substitution. So even though it's messy, I'm still going to pick the top x. So I'm going to get that x by itself. I'm going to subtract, or that y, I'm picking the top y, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I get negative y equals minus 4x plus 20. I just like putting the letter first. I divide everything by negative 1. I end up with y equals positive 4x minus 20. That means I circled the y. I'm going to put 4x minus 20 in for a y right there. So I'm going to rewrite the bottom equation. I'll put negative 2x minus 2, but instead of x, I'm going to put 4x minus 20 equals 10. I'm going to distribute the negative 2. Make sure it's a negative 2, so I get minus 8x plus 40. Probably the most common mistake is I will see that as a minus 40. I end up with minus 10x plus 40 equals 10. Now I'm allowed to solve. So that means I'm going to start getting rid of the addition. I minus 40 from both sides. I get minus 10x equals negative 30. I divide both sides by negative 10. I get x equals positive 3. I have an answer for x. I'm going to plug it into the top equation to get y. So I'm going to put 4. Instead of x, I'm going to put 3. Minus y equals 20. I put 12 minus y equals 20 because 4 times 3 is 12. Now I have to subtract 12 from both sides. I get minus y equals 8. So y equals negative 8. There's my answer for x. There's my answer for y. Remember, I'm going to write it as an ordered pair. 3, negative 8. And that's my answer right there. And that's it for 10. Alright, numbers 11 through number 20 are all going to be elimination. So we're going to be using these steps. Make sure a letter should always cancel. A variable must cancel in step 2. If that doesn't happen, you messed up. So just make sure everything's lined up. Only the last two aren't going to be lined up. Everything else will. So step 1 will be done for number 11 through 18. 19 and 20 are the only ones that need you to do anything with step 1. Step 2, make magic coefficients. Sometimes that's done for you. Sometimes you have to multiply by one number. Sometimes you have to multiply by two numbers. Like you have to multiply the top by a number and the bottom by a different number. Add vertically and solve. This should always be easy. If it's not easy, you messed up. And steps 4 and 5 are the same as before. Alright, so number 11, look, step 1 is done. Everything's lined up. Step 2 is also done because look, the x's already cancel. So that means I just add up and down. Look, I add up and down. I end up with 5y and 2y is 7y equals negative 7. See, look, that's easy. I divide by 7 on both sides. I get y equals negative 1. I get to pick whichever I plug into the top or the bottom. I'm going to plug into the bottom. So I'm going to write negative 3x plus 2. Instead of y, I'm putting negative 1 equals 9. I'm going to get negative 3x minus 2 equals 9. I add 2 to both sides. Negative 3x equals 11. So x equals negative 11 thirds. Maybe you don't like negative 11 thirds. Maybe you want to put x equals negative 2 and 2 thirds. I mean negative 3 and 2 thirds. I don't know why I said. I don't know why I said 2 and 2 thirds. So my final answer is going to be negative 3 and 2 thirds. Negative 1. And maybe you put negative 3.67. Alright, if you put negative 3.6, it's probably not the best answer. Alright, so remember, step 1 is done. Everything's lined up. Step 2, I'm going to focus on the y's. So if I focus on the y's, they're already going to cancel. So step 2 is also done already because the y's are going to cancel. So now I'm just going to add up and down. I end up with x equals 6. I take that 6, I'm going to plug it into one of the originals because look, it's already solved. This one's super easy. So I'm just going to do 4 times 6 plus 6y equals 12. I'm going to end with 24 plus 6y equals 12. I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. I'm going to get 6y equals negative 12. So I divide by 6 on both sides. Y equals negative 2. I have an x. I have a y. So I'm going to write as an ordered pair. Negative 2, 6. 6, negative 2. That's the best answer. I almost flipped that. Alright, number 13, step 1's done. Now step 2 is I'm going to focus on the x's. I want the x's to cancel. I wish that this x, 8x right here, I wish that it could turn into positive 16x, because then it would cancel with this bottom x. So I'm going to do that by multiplying everything by 2. So I multiply everything by 2. Make sure you multiply all three things by 2. So it has to be 16x. Negative 6y times 2 is negative 12y. Negative 20 times 2 is negative 40. The bottom's going to stay the same. So it's going to be negative 16x plus 7y equals 30. Now I'm going to add vertically. The x's cancel. I get negative 5y equals negative 10. I divide both sides by negative 5. I get y equals positive 2. I'm going to take that positive 2. I'm going to plug it into the original problem, and it doesn't matter which one. I'll pick the top. 8x minus, instead of y, I'm going to put 2, so it's 6 times 2 equals negative 20. I'm going to get 8x minus 12 equals negative 20. I add 12 to both sides to get rid of the subtraction. I get 8x equals negative 8. I divide by 8 on both sides. I get x equals negative 1. I have an x, I have a y. I'm going to write it as an ordered pair. Negative 1, 2, and that's it for 13. Alright, so number 14, step 1 is done for me again. So step 2 is, it doesn't matter which one you look at. I'm going to look at the x's just because they're already opposite signs. It doesn't really matter though. You could make the y's go away. I wish this bottom one said negative 6x. So to make that happen, I'm going to multiply everything on the bottom by 6. It's going to turn into negative 6x just like I wanted. Now I multiply everything by x. That's why I have negative 36y equals negative 36. I'm going to keep the top the same. 6x minus 12y equals 24. The x's cancel. So now that's I'm doing step 3. I'm adding vertically, so those cancel. I get minus 48y equals negative 12. So now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 48. I'm going to get y equals 1/4. There's my answer for y. You can put 0.25, that's fine too. I'm going to plug it into the top, so I'm going to say negative x minus 6 times 1/4 equals negative 6. I'm going to get negative x minus 6/4 is the same as 1.5 or 1.5. So you can put negative 1.5 or you can put negative 3/2 or negative 1.5. I'm going to add 1.5 to both sides. So I'm going to get negative x equals negative 4.5. So x equals positive 4.5. I have an x, I have a y. My ordered pair answer is going to be 4.5, 1/4, and I'm done with 14. Alright, 15, once again, they're already lined up, so I need to multiply the bottom by 2 because I want the y's to cancel. So the top is going to stay the same. It's going to become minus 8x minus 10y equals 24. The bottom is going to turn into 12x plus 10y equals 4. Now I'm going to add vertically. The y's cancel. I end up with 4x equals 28. Divide by 4 on both sides. X equals 7. I'm going to take that 7. I'm going to plug it into the top equation. Actually, I'm plugging it to the bottom. I'm plugging it right there. 6 times 7 plus 5y equals 2. I end up with 42 plus 5y equals 2. I subtract 42 from both sides. Remember, you got to get rid of the addition, which is adding 42. you get 5y equals negative 40. Then you divide by 5. You get y equals negative 8. You get an x, you get a y, you write it as an ordered pair. 7, negative 8. And that's your solution. Alright, 16. I'm going to multiply the top by 2 because I want the x's to cancel. And if I had 4x and I turned it into 8x, it would cancel. So the top becomes 8x plus 18y equals negative 20. The bottom's going to stay the same, so it becomes 8x minus 12y equals 8. Now I'm going to add vertically. X's cancel. I end up with 6y equals negative 12. Divide both sides by 6. Y equals negative 2. I take my y, I'm going to plug it in to, we'll take it to the top. So I'm going to write 4x plus 9 instead of y, I'm going to put negative 2 equals negative 10. I get 4x minus 18 equals negative 10. I add 18 because I have to get rid of the subtraction first. Then I divide by 4. I get x equals 2. I have an x, I have a y, I write as an ordered pair. 2, negative 2, and that's it for 16. Alright, number 17, they're already lined up. Now, I'm going to choose to get rid of the x's. Since they're not multiples of each other, I'm going to multiply the top by 5. Why 5? Well, because the number below the 2 is 5. I'm going to multiply the bottom by 2. It's kind of like cross-multiplying, but it's not really cross-multiplying. But that's kind of a way to think of it. It will always work. Basically, guys, I want to get 10x and negative 10x to show up. So the reason they're both positive is because these signs are already opposite. Basically, guys, 10 is the least common multiple of 5 and 2. That's why I made it show up. But if you don't know least common multiples, you just multiply by the top by the bottom, and the bottom by the top. They'll eventually work out. Sometimes it might give you bigger numbers than you want. I continue my multiplication across the top. I end up with 5 times 5 is 25. And then 5 times 17, I'm going to get 85. The bottom, I'm going to have negative 14y. And then I'm going to get negative 20. Now that my x's are going to cancel, I end up with 9y equals 65. I meant to say 11y is 65. 25 minus 14 is 11. I divide both sides by 11. I get y equals 65 over 11 is a fine answer. You can put y equals 5 and 10 elevenths. That's a fine answer. Or you can give me a decimal approximation. I'm going to take 65 over 11, so I'm going to take 5 and 10 elevenths. And I'm going to put it into the top equation. So I'm going to say 2x equals, plus 5 instead of y, I'm going to put 65 over 11 equals 17. So I end up with 2x, and then this messy number is going to turn into another messy number. We'll say 29 and 6/11. Alright. I'm going to subtract it. I'm going to do minus 29 and 6/11 from both sides. I'm going to put 2x equals negative 12 and 6/11. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And with x equals negative 6 and 3/11. So look, it's ugly numbers, but it doesn't mean it's wrong, it just means it's ugly. So I'm going to end up with negative 6 and 3/11 and 5 and 10/11. And that's it for number 17. That's going to finish this one, guys. I'm going to do, so I went numbers 1 through 18. So this is going to be part 1 through 18, and I'll have a real short video to finish the last 4 problems.